Hello, everyone. Want to give it just a moment while you're all connecting to audio before I kick us off. Welcome, welcome. Good morning and good afternoon to all attendees. This is Brooke Akins, and on behalf of Q1 Productions and Celligence, I'd like to welcome you all to today's webinar and thank you for joining us. Today's webinar will discuss the ins and outs of post-market surveillance under the EU MDR. And again, we'd like to say a big thank you to Celligence for sponsoring today's webinar. We're incredibly lucky to have back Mr. Joseph Richardson Larby, who's the Regulatory Affairs Expert of Medical Devices at Celligence. And he's going to be examining the post-market surveillance requirements under the EU MDR and what manufacturers must do to stay compliant. We do have a lot of content to get through today, and we will be sending out a copy of the presentation recording to all registered attendees once the webinar is complete. If you need to jump off anytime, again, we will be recording, so no need to worry about that. There will also be an opportunity to submit questions to our presenter today via the Q&A feature in your Zoom toolbar. We appreciate all of the questions that have been pre-submitted in advance, and we have dedicated a few minutes after today's presentation to get to those, but please feel free to continue to submit your questions via the Q&A feature, and a representative from Celligence will get back to you at a later date. Without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Celligence's Dylan Mulvihill, who will be kicking off today's presentation.
Hello, and welcome everyone to today's webcast, and thank you for joining. My name is Dylan Mulvihill, and I'm an associate here at Celligence. Today, we will be going over what to keep in mind for post-market surveillance under the EU MDR. And joining me for today's featured presentation will be Joseph Richardson Larby, who is a medical device regulatory consultant and expert here at Celligence. Now, if you have any questions about Celligence's capabilities or experiences, feel free to contact me at the email address at the bottom of the screen. Now, for today's agenda, we'll start with an introduction about Celligence from myself, and following that, we will go into the regulations themselves, 2017-745, Pms facts, then moving on to the purpose of PMS and MDR requirements, then to the forms of PMS systems and their integrations, before then moving on to the manufacturer's obligations and best practices, before finally giving an opportunity for the audience to ask questions to our expert, Joseph. So to provide you with a background on Celligence, we were formed in 2017 with the intent of improving quality and compliance while reducing costs for the life sciences industry in the area of regulatory affairs. And we now serve some of the top global companies in both the device and pharmaceutical sectors, which you can see from the assortment of our current clients on the right here. Now, Celligence provides regulatory affairs services such as MDR gap analyses, CER writing, device registrations, and other operational and strategic activities required for global device compliance. Now, our offices are located in Chicago, where our headquarters is, as well as London and Bangalore, India. Now, here you can see our team's expertise in many areas of medical device, RA, and QA. We have worked with numerous clients in many therapeutic areas, as you can see on this slide. And we have also developed technology to improve efficiency for compliance operational activities related to the EU MDR, specifically focusing on clinical evaluation report authoring. And all of this work is overseen by our highly experienced and expert management team that to date has finalized over 100 successful CEP, CER, and LSR documents. And now I'd like to move on here just to give you a brief introduction about our speaker today, Joseph Richardson Larby. Joseph has over 20 years experience in the medical device lifecycle management and quality management systems. And his key experiences include the preparation and maintenance of technical files, product safety and vigilance reporting, clinical evaluations, risk assessment, regulatory audits, as well as CE and notified body opinion submissions. Now, Joseph has experience that includes diabetes management devices, nicotine replacement therapy devices, as well as pressurized metered dose inhalers. And then Joseph has worked for a wide range of companies in his career, from small and medium sized companies to large biotech companies such as Roche, OBG Pharmaceuticals, and Kind Consumer. Now I'd like to pass things off to Joseph. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dylan. Thanks for the introduction of the company and of myself. So thanks. Yes, good day, everybody, wherever you are. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm located in the UK, so it's the afternoon at the moment. I hope the weather is nice, sunny, bright, wherever you are. So thank you for joining today's webinar. Today's webinar, we're going to cover post-market surveillance of medical devices under the MDR. So yeah, there's a lot to cover within a short space of time. I can take every element of post-market surveillance and spend a good 2 hours on every particular topic or chapter. But we've got limited time. I'll try and make this as brief and succinct as possible. And at the same time, make sure that I'm able to answer your questions. And yeah, hopefully you learn something from this, and you'll be able to implement it accordingly in your organization, in your role. Okay, so I hope you enjoy the ride, and yeah, let's get into it. So to start, let's briefly have a look at the MDR. So the MDR's date of application, as we all know, the 26th of May, 2021. This was after a 4-year transition period, initially planned for 3 years, but due to COVID, there was an additional year added. So that's 4 years in total. So since 2017, in April or May 2017, so that makes it 4 years. It's immediately applicable to all devices currently on the market, especially when it comes to post-market surveillance. And when it comes to legacy devices, for legacy devices that are on the market and certified to the MDD, the post-market requirements under the MDR are immediately applicable. And I've put a note here to say that legacy devices, basically, if you go a class 1 device, which is non-sterile and non-measuring, then these devices are not necessarily classified as legacy devices. They are termed as regulation devices. So this was in a guidance issued by the European Commission that had to do with UDMED. And if you've got a legacy device and you don't have a basic UDI, how are you going to register in UDMED and so? And then I think this was released in April this year. I'll try and find a reference and then insert that in the comment box for you. But yeah, class 1 devices that are non-measuring or non-sterile are not classed as legacy devices. They are classed as regulation devices because basically you don't have a notified body that's to certify them with a certificate. So with immediate effect, those kind of devices must be compliant to the MDR fully. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's proceed further. Right. The purpose of a post-market surveillance and your MDR requirements. So we'll dig into this to find out why do we need to do a post-market surveillance and what are the key requirements, and then build on that going forward. So, what is a post-market surveillance? I mean, it's clearly defined in the MDR what a post-market surveillance is. But let's take a minute to think or discuss or talk about this. You've gone through a lot of hard work to develop your medical device. All the research and development is taking you months, weeks, years to produce all your, the data, your quality management systems, your risk management, You've done all the pre-market stuff. You've gone through the notified body conformity assessments, you know, the labeling requirements, so all of that. So, you know, a lot of effort and, you know, money has gone into your products to go to the market. Now, you don't want to put this product on the market and basically post-market surveillance will tarnish the image of your company or of your product. You want to maintain a good image, you know, on the market. You want to make sure that the device is compliant to the standards. And, you know, when you get the opportunity or the chance to improve the product, you do so as well. So post-market surveillance basically is, you know, the activities that as a manufacturer you need to do to maintain compliance to the standards. It could be learning about the device, you know, maybe you had relatively small clinical data during your pre-market stage. But now that you've gone to market, it's being widely used. It's possibly going to be used by a wider patient group. So you need to, you know, get some insights about the product, how it's actually performing, its safety requirements, its performance requirements, and reevaluate your risk measures. Okay, so these activities that you do, sort of like to study, to monitor, to collect relevant data about the product that's already on the market, this is what you call your post-market surveillance. Okay, so as it's defined in the MDR, as you see on the screen, it says all activities carried out by manufacturers in cooperation with economic operators to institute and keep up to date a systematic procedure to proactively collect and review experience gained from devices that are placed on the market, made available on the market, or put into service for the purpose of identifying any need to immediately apply any necessary corrective or preventive actions. So I've aligned the keywords that, you know, stand out, or, you know, basically explain what post-market surveillance is. Key responsibility, manufacturers. But, you know, economic operators do also factor into this. Your distributors, your importers, you know, they all play a key part in this particular process of the device on the market. And there must be a systematic procedure, and it must be proactive. Okay, and you are basically collecting and reviewing performance data, safety data of the device that's already on the market, and you might have to take actions. Okay, so these could be corrective or preventive actions. Okay, so if you have to do these things, then, you know, take this definition, and that is your post-market surveillance. We all know about, you know, I'm sure we've heard, you know, devices that have been recalled, or you know, other efforts need to be done, whether it's going to see your doctor for more health scans, you know, take the metal on metal hip implant scenario that happened around 2010. You know, the MHRA, the UK's competent authority, later on, I think as latest as 2017, reissued another field safety notice to say, you know, if you have got a metal on metal implant, then, you know, within the set, if you're under 5 years of your operation, then make sure you go for a health scan or a blood test every year. Between 5 and 7 years, you must do it every 2 years, you know. So all of these things are, you know, as a result of post-market surveillance. Okay, so that was just to put a shape to what post-market surveillance is. Okay, so The purpose is to identify the need to immediately apply any necessary corrective or preventive actions as outlined by the definition. But what are some of the corrective or preventive actions? It could be to relabel the devices with the correct expiry dates or relevant use information, to amend your information for use with any safety or performance information that you've gathered and you think needs to be communicated to the user. It could be patients, it could be healthcare professionals, or it could be to the public, the general public, you know. It could be a total recall of affected units, or it could be for you to modify units that are already going through production due to what you've seen of the devices that you've placed on the market. Okay. So now we're going to look into the requirements of post-market surveillance. We've looked at what the definition is, what the purpose is, you know, a few of the actions that we might have to take. Hopefully we don't need to take any of those drastic actions like the total recall. I have been involved in, you know, one or two of those. You know, it's a daunting process. So I won't wish that on my worst enemy. Not that I've got any enemies out there. So yes, post-market surveillance MDR requirements. The requirements are stated in Articles 83 to 92 of the MDR. So that's specifically titled post-market surveillance, and it goes through every article and it tells you what you need to do. So to put it graphically, how these articles tie together or how they relate to each other, I've put this together to help us understand what we're trying to do, the activity, the systems, the reports that we're trying to raise. Okay, so let's start with Article 83, which defines the PMS system that you must have in place and what you're going to do. The PMS system is actually driven by your PMS plan. Your PMS plan is stated in Article 84, or you've got Annex 3. So the annexes will tell you how you should put things together, whilst your articles tell you what you should do. Okay, so the articles will tell you what to do, but they won't tell you how. Excuse me. But the annexes will tell you how or what exactly should be put into your particular document or report. So your PMS plan, which drives the system, because the plan will detail the methods that you're going to use to collect your data, or what are you going to collect, the frequency, how to communicate, and all of those things will be stated in your PMS plan. The system is, you know, that will put together everything that you are going to do, and you'll be able to review the system and how it's performing in, for example, in your management review meetings. Now, your PMS plan should be part of your technical documentation that you will be submitting initially for your conformity assessment with your notified body, and for your technical documentation that's stated in Annex 2. So you see that there. So coming back to your PMS system, where you will define a key activity that you will be carrying out for your particular product, you have Article 85, which talks about your PMS report, post-market surveillance report. This is applicable to Class 1s. And, you know, I'll touch base on all of these articles and go down a little bit deeper on each article and what we're trying to do. So Article 85 is for your post-market report for Class 1s. Your Article 86 is your PSUR, periodic summary update report, was it safety update report. And then you've got Article 87 that talks about your serious incidences or serious incidents, and your field safety corrective action reporting. And Article 88 will talk about your trend reports. So how you analyze and what triggers you put in place, what systems you are actually using to analyze the data of your medical device. And from Article 87, where you've got your serious incidents and FSCA reporting, you have Article 89. It branches off into Article 89 that then talks about how you're going to analyze these reports, okay, or the analysis of these reports. So both from a manufacturer's point of view and from the competent authority and the European Commission's point of view. So we should all bear in mind that the MDR came about as, as a result of heavy criticism that was alleged against the MDD framework and, the key parties involved, i.e. Some of the notified bodies, excuse me, some of the notified bodies and the sort of like shady work that they were doing. Some of them were affiliated with some manufacturers with, deep pockets and not really thinking about the safety of patients. Basically just, the commercial side of the business was the number one priority to some of these notified bodies. And this is why we're going through the whole redesignation process to basically weed out the weaker ones. So now emphasis has been placed on both the manufacturer, notified bodies, and competent authorities. So competent authorities, especially, are supposed to carry out detailed analysis of vigilance, analysis of reports that manufacturers or notified bodies are submitting to the electronic system, which I'll come to later. And that system is what's defined in Article 92. The UDMED, so the European Database for Medical Devices. That is explained in Article 92, how we're going to submit reports electronically into this particular system. So from Article 92, then, it branches off into Article 90, which then talks about, the competent authorities and the analysis that they will be doing. So, I've represented this with 3 diamond shapes to represent, the member states or the competent authorities. And these will have to work with the European Commission when they're carrying out extra analysis. And other member states as well. So, it's being driven right at the top, Article 90, the European Commission and the competent authorities will be assessing Article 92, the data that has been submitted by the manufacturer into UDMED. They will instantly have access to this. Competent authorities can then say, okay, let's analyze a particular wound care dressing device that, let's say, we've got reports of in France, and the trend in the report is not looking good. France could then ask, hey, my German colleagues, how is this device performing on your market? And they'll say, okay, we haven't got any reports yet, or we have got some reports, and yes, the trend indicates it's going up, and they can come up to conclusions, and they can approach the manufacturers to take different actions if they think the manufacturer is not taking the appropriate actions. So this is a graphical representation of the articles from Article 83 to Article 92. And how they relate to each other, or it basically explains the post-market surveillance system that we need to build, and the key things that we need to do. I've put at the bottom here things that are not necessarily covered within Articles 83 to 92. You've got your quality management systems with its SOPs. You've got your risk management system, you've got your clinical evaluation reports, the plans and the reports, and then you've got your post-market clinical follow-up plans and reports, and then you've got your summary of safety and clinical performance of your devices, which I'll touch base on some of these things as we go through the webinar. But yeah, feel free to drop in any questions that you have in the comments box, in your question box, and yeah, I'll be happy to answer some of these questions at the end. So let's get into this, and let's see what we can unravel. Right, so let's start with Article 83, which describes, you must have a post-market surveillance system. This system should be established and maintained. The PMS should be part of your quality management system. So you must have processes already identified, defined, and written, readily available for auditing, to demonstrate what you are going to do, the key processes that you're going to do depending on your device classification. So if you've got a class 2A or class 2B device, then you go through the requirements of the MDR. You would know which kind of reports are applicable to your particular product. You have to carry out a clinical evaluation, you have to do trending, all these things. You will list these things out, and you will have your SOPs addressing these things. And the reason why it's linked to your QMS, because your QMS is very integral to all systems. Your QMS will operate as the beating function of your medical device. So once you are auditing your quality management system to define the things that you're going to do, because you've stated what you're going to do. So auditors will be looking at, okay, this is your plan. Are you actually going according to your plan? And if you've planned it properly, then everything should fall into place. Okay, so your PMS system is risk class dependent. Okay, it must be suited to the activities that you're doing, and it must systematically gather, record, and analyze the data that you're going to capture. And what sort of data are we going to capture? The data should be able to cover the quality, performance, and safety of your device. And this must be throughout the lifetime or the life cycle of your device. So it's not just the first 2 years of putting the product onto the market. It's for the entire lifetime, if it's decades or weeks, months, days, whatever you've defined your life cycle as. It must be able to cover the entire life cycle, and you must have a plan for it. But for some of these reports, you have to do them annually. For some of these reports, you have to submit them every 2 years. So some of them you have to go according to your notified body audit schedule. So we'll come on to all of these things later, but your PMS system must be able to establish all of these from the get-go. Right, what is this data that we are capturing? What is it going to be used for? Basically, you want to get information about other family devices that you've already got on the market. So if you've got a different version of the medical device but falls into the same family group, then you can draw comparisons because they might be using key components. So if you've got a failure, for example, of a circuit board on your active medical device, and you've got the same circuit board in another product, and you getting concerns or complaints about this particular component, then you should be able to know, okay, I've used this circuit board in other products. How are those products also performing on the market? And then begin to analyze and proactively do things about it. This is what the MDR is trying to get us to do as manufacturers. Well, I'm no longer a manufacturer, but yeah, you have to seek that data, that information, and take the appropriate actions. you want to improve the usability and the performance and safety aspects, as I've just explained. You want to update your risk management file. Before going to market, you have defined your benefits and your risk ratios, which was guided by Annex 1 of your GSPRs or Annex 1 of your essential requirements if you're a legacy device. You must be able to reevaluate all of these things as you're getting the complaints coming through, you're getting the information, the data coming through. You must be able to reevaluate some of these things and update your risk management file according to the current ISO standards, ISO 14971, 2019 version. Also, you look at your end-to-end processes. Okay, so starting from your design element of it, do you need to amend your design? Let's take usability of a particular device, how it's held. Maybe it's not, users are not able to use it properly. Maybe if they hold it in a certain way, it drops, or they're not able to press buttons correctly. Maybe so you can reconfigure buttons, and I'm not saying that you can do that overnight. It takes time to reconfigure some of these things, but at least it will give you an indication of how you can improve the design of your medical device. How you manufacture the product, it all links into these things, and what information you need to communicate to the wider audience about the use of the product, whether it's that on the labeling, the packaging, or in the information for use, or your pills and your IFUs. You have all this information will feed into key decisions for these components of your device. You'll be able to update your clinical evaluation that's stated in Article 61, and I'll touch base briefly on that later on. To update your summary of safety and clinical performance, that's stated in Article 32, and to identify any preventive or corrective actions, your field safety corrective actions, which are stated in Article 87, and basically to analyze, it will build into your trend reporting as well. So, in a particular week or particular month, if you see your complaints heading in a particular direction, then you can build onto that and apply your statistical analysis and come up to some conclusions depending on what you've predefined in your plan. Okay. So that was the PMS system, and what you're going to do, as stated in Article 83. Article 84 defines your PMS plan. The plan is what, the system is driven by the plan. Okay. So it's kind of like, the chicken or the egg scenario. Does your plan define your system? Does your system define your plan, kind of thing? Personally, I look at this and I think, why did they put the plan in Article 84 and not Article 83? Maybe the plan should have come first to define the system. That's just my critical analysis. Whether I'm right or wrong is a different thing, but yeah. But according to the standards, the PMS plan, your PMS system is driven by the PMS plan. Elements of the plan are stated in Annex 3, Section 1 to be precise, and I'll cover some aspects in the next slide. And the plan that you put in place must be able to achieve all the things that you have defined as what you're going to do in your PMS system. And the PMS system must be part of your QMS. So you see how these things are linking together now. So your QMS defines your PMS system, and your PMS system has got the PMS plan. So they're all integrated. Okay, and your PMS plan must be part of your technical documentation. Why is it part of your technical documentation? Your notified body that's basically assessing your products at the very beginning of your regulatory journey to get your approval for the to get your CE mark approval. basically wants to know what you're going to do to maintain the product, to continue to be compliant to the MDR, or whatever standards that you are following, to make sure that you are putting processes in place and you are actually going to follow these, and to make sure that the device is going to be compliant, and most importantly, users are going to be safe. Okay, your benefits do outweigh your risks. That's why they'll give you the approval, award you with the CE mark. But when it's widely used, what does this benefit risk ratio look like, after millions of people have actually used your device? So these are things that notified bodies will be concerned about, especially under the MDR. And, there are bottlenecks with the notified bodies. We've only got about 20 notified bodies at the moment, serving the entire Europe and, third countries as well. So yeah, it's a jungle out there at the moment, but I'm sure with time, things will calm down a little bit. Okay, Article 84, the PMS plan. What constitutes a good PMS plan? You must be able to scope out your activities, the methods you're going to use to collect your data. So whether it's, if you've got a contact center that will be taking in complaints or feedback, if you've got a sales force out there that are in direct contact with patients or healthcare professionals that are using the device, if they report a complaint, obviously the HCPs must know how to report the complaint, whether they're using something similar to, in the UK, we've got something called the yellow card system that you can report directly to your competent authority, the MHRA. If your country has this, then, the HCP should be able to utilize, a similar method, or they must know how to contact the manufacturer or representatives to report a complaint. So what methods are you going to use to gather this data if you're going to analyze scientific literature? What databases are you going to assess? Is it PubMed? Is it, Embase, and all these scientific literature databases that are out there? How are you going to analyze your data? What methods are you going to deploy your methodology to analyze the data? All of these things must be stated in your PMS plan, which is part of your QMS, and you must have your SOPs. Okay, so that is the plan. The most important thing that we've got here is the PMS plan must identify your PMCF plan as well. So your PMCF plan must be part of your PMS plan. So post-market clinical follow-up is part of your post-market surveillance. And there's big emphasis on post-market clinical follow-up for medical devices under the MDR. So basically for your post-market clinical follow-up, like I said, going to market, you might have very little clinical data on the use of the device. But now that it's being widely used, how is it performing? What's the safety and performance of it? The side effects that you identified pre-market stage, how are things holding up? Are you seeing more of a bigger ratio or less? The contraindications that you stated, how are they stacking up? Is it the same? Are you seeing more? Is the device being used off-label, not as per you've described or you've prescribed it to be used? All of these things you need to sort of identify those, what methods you're going to use, what are the key objectives that you're going to cover in your post-market clinical follow-up. And it's advisable to space out your post-market clinical follow-up activities. So you will have a list of objective things that you want to achieve, and some of them could cost a lot of money, okay? But it's advisable to space these things out over a period of time. So don't just go in year 1, year 2, trying to achieve everything. Obviously, if you've got the means, the time and everything, and you can do it, that's fantastic. Go ahead and get that done. But it's acceptable, I must say, acceptable, probably not advisable, but it's acceptable if you decide to spread out some of these activities over a 5-year period, for example. So you say year 1, this is what you're going to cover. Year 2, this is what you're going to cover as your objectives. And then basically feed in your risk elements from the pre-market stage with the data that you've gathered in your post-market stage, reevaluate things. And that's basically your post-market clinical follow-up. How you do this, depends on clinical data. So that's data that's being derived from the use of the device. So that's your, direct market feedback from your users, scientific literature searches, of similar devices. If you're going by equivalence, that's a different thing. Similar devices that are out there, and their safety and performance data that's out there. You update your clinical evaluations with these objectives, and that's basically your post-market clinical follow-up. A post-market clinical follow-up is basically an update to your clinical evaluation. It feeds into your clinical evaluation, but it's an update of your clinical evaluation and what inputs you put onto the post-market clinical follow-up. So what sort of information sources are we going to be looking at? So you got your proactive and reactive stuff. So like I've explained, complaints, for example, is reactive. It's not necessarily proactive, but a post-market clinical follow-up is deemed as proactive. A clinical evaluation will be proactive as well. And you must define your timelines that you're going to get things done, the thresholds and the limits, statistical trends, and what actions you're going to take, how it fits into your risk management, and you define your severity levels and the actions that you're going to take, how it affects the manufacturing of the product, and your clinical evaluation reports. And in this PMS plan, you must state how you're going to communicate, what methods you're going to use to communicate. If you need to carry out a field safety corrective action, then what methods are you going to explore? You must have a process already defined for your field safety corrective actions. In case something needs to happen, then your representative should be able to pick up the SOP and act accordingly. Okay, how are you going to communicate with your competent authorities, economic operators, or your notified bodies, etc.? All right, so that's Article 84. Article 85, we've got our PMS report. Okay. For the PMS report, which is mainly applicable to Class 1 devices, this is a summary. So this report is a summary of all the activities that you've outlined that you will carry out in your PMS plan. And it must be focused on the performance or the quality of your device. So that is your PMS report. What are the things that are involved, or what's the content of your PMS report? You must have your methods of collecting, analyzing, and conclusions that you've made. Okay, so you basically define how you're going to get your complaints and feedback. How you've analyzed and what conclusions you've made. The trending of both serious and non-serious incidents, So you state, what trending activities you've done and for what period you've done this, and what conclusions are you drawing out of your trending reports. What information have you gathered on similar devices that are already on the market? Based on the performance of the device, they must be comparable in performance. So all of these things, and others, you have to put this into a report. And bear in mind, this is for class one devices. So the risk is low. You still have to do, a clinical evaluation, for example. But for a PMS report, this is what's expected of a class one medical device. It doesn't necessarily state the frequency that you have to get your PMS report done. However, it's advisable that you do this annually as best practice. You're not doing it for the competent authorities, but you want to learn about your device as well. So build your QMS to have all of these integral components. Review them at for example, your management reviews, where top management is present and they can review these reports in much detail. Also, don't wait until your management reviews. It must be something that's done week in, week out. But yeah, get your PMS report done annually as best practice, or as dictated by your notified body. Moving on to Article 86, which is your periodic safety update reports. This is applicable to Class 2As and from Class 2As to Class 3 devices. And just like your PMS report, it adds on a little bit more. Okay, so it's similar to a PMS report, but it adds on a little bit more. So again, you've got the summary of activities that you've stated that you will carry out in your PMS plan. And you must detail your conclusions that you've made. And, you must have the rationale for actions that you've taken. So, if you had to take particular corrective or preventive actions, if you had to amend the design because of, your trending information, for example, then why did you carry out such an action? Obviously, you must make sure that you define a field safety corrective action, and these corrective actions that you are taking, there's a fine line between them. If you do carry out a field safety corrective action, then you must notify your competent authority and notified bodies, get them involved in the process and communicate appropriately. So there's a fine line between that and the rationale for corrective actions that you are taking under a PSUR. Key content of a PSUR, as you are putting as you are finalizing the activities that you've defined in your PMS plan, some of them will feed into your benefit and risk ratios. You have to update your risk management plan or file. When you've done this, what are your conclusions for your benefit and risk ratio? How is it stacking up? What does it look like? Is it getting better, or is it getting worse? And what actions do you need to take? Your PSUR should have the outcome of your PMCF. Okay, and this is very, very critical. So here we've got a PSUR that needs input from your PMCF, and you've got your PMCF that needs to look at elements of your CER. So you look at, in trying to define the frequency of carrying out a PSUR, it must fall in line with your CER frequency, because your CER will feed into your PMCF, and your PMCF falls into your PSUR. So you see how these reports are integrated, and annoyingly, some of these processes will be repeated severally, analyzing your risk management and inputs into your risk management, the output from your risk management. When you carrying out a CER report, you have to carry out that activity. When you're doing the PMCF, you have to carry out that activity. When you're doing the PSUR, you have to carry out that particular activity. That's what I see, having worked in the manufacturing space. This is what I see as something that is irritating to manufacturers, that with some of these activities you will have to repeat them a number of times in a year, which it is annoying. It will consume a lot of resources, but it's what we need to do. When I say we, manufacturers or users, we are the same people complaining about, the MDD was not compliant. It's not up to scratch. It's not protecting the user. And now they've put in these things, and we are the same people that will complain that it's taking a lot of time, it's taking a lot of resources. Yes, I do understand, but that's where we find ourselves. So we just have to make do with the cards that we've been dealt with. Okay, so the outcome of your PMCF feeds into your PSUR, and then you've got your device use data. This last point is one of the new requirements under the MDR, where manufacturers are supposed to know how their device has been used. What is the frequency? I mean, have a look at the volume of sales. All of these things are feeding into your PSURs. What population is actually using your device? Is it the same population that you intended to use the device, or is it a different population? As much as you can, you must detail some of this information. So for one of the companies that I recently worked for, I started collecting this data, volume of sales on a weekly basis, just to make sure that when it gets to the PSUR, I'll be able to produce that accordingly. The frequency, how many people are buying the same product every week, or recurrent sales, and all of this information, everything must feed into your PSUR. Okay, right, so that's Article 86. And the frequency of a PSUR is for a Class 2A every 2 years. Class 2B and 3, it's every year. For Class 3s and implantable devices, these shall be submitted via UDMED, and I'll touch base on UDMED on Article 92 in a moment. Okay, now, reporting of serious incidents and field safety corrective actions. I hope you guys are still with me. It's a lot to take in, but hopefully, I'm drawing a picture that you can see how all these articles relate to each other, and the sort of like system they're trying to create. Okay, so what are serious incidents? If your device is being used by a person, a patient, a HCP, and it's thought to have caused death, then that is a serious incident. If it's thought to have caused a deterioration in the state of health of the patient or of the public, then that's also a serious incident. Or if it's got a serious public health threat. I mean, I try to think of serious public health threats, and medical devices, like I mean, take I don't know, some of these IVD devices involved in the COVID-19 testing space. If a particular manufacturer has manufactured a lot of IVD devices that are being used, and a big percentage of it is giving false positives or false negatives, then you can argue that that is a serious public health threat, because if I carry out a COVID test and it tells me I'm negative, then I might not what's the word, isolate myself. I'll go out and socialize, and although I might wear a mask or whatever, but I could be spreading the virus. So that could be considered as a serious public health threat. If you disagree with what I'm saying, drop a comment, and let's discuss at the end. And so those are the incidents that are classed as serious incidents that will have to be reported. There is a caveat to that, and I'll come to that in a moment, but let's talk about the criteria for reporting serious incidents. If you get a serious incident that's classified as death or unanticipated deterioration in the state of health, then you've got a maximum of 10 days to report it. If it involves public health threat, then that's 2 days. For all other serious incidents, it's 15 days. So take note of these timelines. They have changed from the MDD. I think the MDD was going with a was it 30-22, so 30 days for all other serious incidents, and I think it was 20 days for the death or unanticipated deterioration of health, and it was still 2 days for the public health threats. But now that some of them have been slashed into 2, so now you've got your 15-10-2. Make sure that you've revised your SOPs accordingly. You've trained your staff to report these things. For companies that have affiliates and main hubs, and information feeds in from affiliates into a global source, and information complaints or data will be trended. Then make sure that all personnel have been trained accordingly, and they following the new guidelines, all the way down to your sales team, who must know the new guidelines, and your literature must all be updated accordingly. Side effects which have been quantified, documented, and subject to trend reporting are exempt from these reporting criteria. So if you've already identified a particular incident as a side effect, and you have quantified this, documented it in your technical documentation, or for example, if it's on the IFU, for example, then this is not part of the particular reporting criteria that I've outlined here. Okay, so that's serious incidents and field safety corrective actions. I think there's another slide for this for FSCAs. So field safety corrective actions, what are they? So if you are a manufacturer and you've got a device on the market and you are having to carry out an action for the device that you've already put onto the market, say a recall, you're having to amend the IFU to communicate, for example, faults or alarms that could be missed. These actions are classed as field safety corrective actions, and there are certain procedures that you have to follow to carry out these actions. You just can't amend things on the fly just like that, and hope it will sit well with the notified body or the competent authority. That will not, I guarantee you. So what are field safety corrective actions? Corrective actions taken by a manufacturer to prevent or reduce the occurrence of serious incidents of a device made available on the market. And examples are amending an IFU to communicate faults or alarms that could be missed, advising of frequent health scans. I touched base on this at the beginning. So you've got the metal implants, and the MHRA issuing another field safety notice in 2017, advising patients that have got metal implants to go for frequent scans. Because I read about this because I think the metal rubbing against each other will release certain cobalt and another metallic component into the bloodstream. It's not poisonous or anything, which was a miscommunication that was out there. It's not poisonous or anything, but these will show up on blood tests, and it will indicate whether your hip implant is failing or not. So that's one thing that is an example of a field safety corrective actions, trying to tell patients to go for frequent scans. The recall of IVD devices that give an unexpected increase in false negative or positive results that could lead to the wrong clinical decision, okay? And for your FSCAs, you must make sure that, you have defined these things properly. You define what the actions are and what you're going to take. It must be part of your PMS plan, part of your QMS. You must have an SOP for it. You must be able to capture data and analyze it and trend it properly. How are you going to report these to your competent authorities? Whether you have to issue an FSN, so a field safety notice. Field safety corrective actions are notified via a field safety notice. And then you need to basically monitor, investigate that particular action that you've taken, get to the root cause, of the particular problem. And you have to then, go back and submit reports, how well your FSCA is performing, what other actions can be taken. And you eventually, I'm guessing you might have to correct the device somehow, whether it's the design or you have to correct literature, you have to relabel. These are some of the corrections that you have to make. So these are some of the key elements of a field safety corrective action. Okay. Right, and then we've got Article 88, so trend reporting. Let's go quickly. Let's go straight to it. What is trend reporting? So the recording and analyzing of incidents, and this must be done statistically, of serious and non-serious incidents to determine abnormal frequency or severity of the incident. So the main thing is statistically, what statistical tools are you going to use? Are you going to use regression analysis? Are you going to use averages? Are you going to medians? Are you going to use standard deviations? What statistical approach are you going to use? You have to define that according to your device classification and how it's going to be used, and the frequency of faults that you're going to get or things that could go wrong with the system, and devise your trend reporting system. Reports shall be submitted electronically via UDMED, and for known previously reported incidents or faults, these should be communicated via a periodic summary report, a PSR. For the PSRs, that involves a lot of work actually. For your PSRs, you must agree beforehand with your competent authority on the formats, the frequency, what goes into it, what's not going to go into it. These must be agreed before a PSR is then submitted. If you're going to be doing it every month, every 3 months, every 6 months, every year, whatever, your competent authority will be able to advise you on these things. And just deal with your competent authority, make sure they've agreed to it, or they will actually prescribe it. They will tell you what to do. So it's something that you need to take care of at that stage. Yes, they will be in touch if you need to produce something in a PSR, because at that stage you've been reporting a few things that have been happening, and they'll say, okay, we know about this now. You've been submitting it every 3 months. Can you now do it every 6 months and highlight it in this particular format? And you have to stick to the format that they've agreed to. Okay, so I've put an example here of a statistical trend analysis. Looking on your screen, the orange line is your upper threshold. Your blue line is your mean of particular fault code. And the gray line is, what you're marking against a month in, month out. And, you could see a big spike, a big peak on this particular graph. We're looking at March 20 going up to April 20. So this is based on 3 standard deviation approach. I think a 3 standard deviation is sort of like 97% confidence in your data. So yes, you come up with the statistical approach that is relevant or appropriate to your particular device and the classification. Right, analyzing serious incidents and field safety corrective actions. So manufacturer's duties after reporting incidents. So these are the things that you need to do after you reported an incident. You have to investigate the root cause of the incident, assess the risk to the user, make changes to the design where it's needed, the manufacturing process or the labeling, work with the competent authorities and the notified bodies on the investigation process. And, with some of these, at times you don't have to, tamper with the device. There could be a police investigation into let's say it involves the unfortunate death of a patient, then you must keep that device in the state that it is. It has to be investigated. You have to wait until your competent authority gives you the go-ahead to carry out an investigation that will damage the device, so make sure you involve the competent authority at all stages when you're carrying out your investigation. If you're going to carry out a particular test that will be deemed as destructive to the device, then you must seek clarification before you approval before you do so, just in case your device has to go to a third party for a test, for example, to test its functionality or its safety or performance protocols. I have been involved in some of these things, working with the police and manufacturers to come to a bottom line or conclusion on the sad death of a patient using the device. It's not fun, but it has to be done. Keep the affected device safe and do not destroy it. And as you've reported it, continue to analyze what actions could be taken. What other field safety corrective actions can you take? So analyze these and then take the right action accordingly. Your competent authority will initiate actions if the manufacturers are inefficient or not effective in their processes. So that's the competent authorities will put you on the straight path if you're not doing things the right way. And you really do not want, as a manufacturer, you don't want to be on the bad side of a competent authority. So post-market surveillance involves a lot of relationship maintenance. You're dealing with people, you're building on relationships. So who does count. Okay, it does help in this case. So make sure you are maintaining your relationships and you are doing what the competent authority needs. Okay. Analysis of vigilance data. So this has got to do with the European Commission and the member states' competent authorities analyzing data within UDMED, how they do that, and they'll nominate a particular coordinating competent authority to work with the manufacturers to communicate and take the right action. So this is how they analyze the data in UDMED, and this is a key function of the new UDMED that's going to come, because now they'll have access to it. certain aspects will be available to the public. For example, if you publish a field safety notice, it will be available to the public in UDMID. A part of it will be available, so users can see what manufacturers are communicating about devices that they are using. Okay. And I'll jump to 92 because 91 is about implementing acts, documents that the EC is going to make available to make the whole system work. So there's not much to discuss there. Article 92, so the electronic system on vigilance and PMS. So this is the UDMID aspect. Okay, now UDMID, I can spend 3 hours on UDMID, but in summary, it's the database that they're going to be using for registering manufacturers and devices, and to use that to track and trace devices that are on the market. So manufacturers will have to register the device in UDMID, or register themselves first as an actor in UDMID, get a key code called the single registration number, or the authorized representative will be able to do that. And devices will have to be registered in UDMID using the basic UDI DI, and that's an entire different topic when it comes to UDI and legacy devices and regulating devices. Maybe we'll do something in the future, because a lot is changing on UDMID. So if you're interested in UDMID and UDI and how things are going to work, and you want us to explore those areas, then send us an email, and yeah, we'll factor that one in for our next webinar. The European Commission will be the data controller for UDMID. And like I said, manufacturers will have to register themselves. And, there are a few modules and timelines specified for UDMID. And yes, I've got a table here that tells us what's coming soon, or what has not been advised at the moment. So your middle column here, you've got the module references. So the ATAS module was available in December 20. So manufacturers can actually go into UDMID and start registering themselves. Registering devices using the UDI aspects and notified bodies and certificates module, those will be available in September 2021. So we're looking forward to that. But for now, the actor module for actors registration module for UDMID is available. Make sure you've set up yourself, you've got an account, and you follow the guidelines there. And go through the process and register. Okay, if you need assistance, you can reach out to Celigence, and we'll be able to act as an authorized representative and get these things done on your behalf as well, whether it's UDI registration, GS1, GTIN codes, and stuff like that. We'll be able to assist you with that. So that is UDMID, and I think previously I touched base on certain reports that will have to be submitted into UDMID or via UDMID. So you had your PSUR, for example, that needs to go into UDMID, and your CERs and PMCFs. I think some of them will have to go into it, but I did touch base on those early on. Okay, so we've gone through the forms of the post-market surveillance system. We're coming to the end now, so stay with me about 5 or 10 more minutes. The systems and the integrations, I've touched base on some of these things, but let's have a look at an overview on some of these things that we've discussed, just to wrap things up nicely, so we know what are the requirements and what key reports are needed. So your forms of your PMS must cover both proactive and reactive data. So you've got complaints and feedback, reactive, PSURs, proactive, PSRs, reactive, I'll call that. Your trend reporting, reactive as well. It could be proactive on, the way you, depending on how you look at it. Clinical evaluations and PMCFs are proactive. Risk management reporting, so those will be proactive as well, because you've defined your risk management, you've input things to it. You are now looking at your benefit risk ratio, so it's a proactive thing that you are doing. Your SSCPs, your summary of safety and clinical performance of your devices for the ones that need it, and I think they are class 3s and implantables. Those will be proactive. Your SSCPs are not necessarily covered under your PMS in Articles 83 to 92. However, it's stated in Article 32, just after the UDAMED, UDI and UDAMED articles. You've got SSCPs right there. And, that's a proactive form of a PMS that you have to do. So I'll put this table together that basically shows us the frequency of what we need to do for class 1 devices, the key PMS reports that you need to produce for class 2As, 2Bs, class 3s, and implantables. And, I've gone through all of these in detail during the webinar. But this is just a summary. Put this in a table. Probably I should have provided this earlier and say, okay, that's it. This is your table, and then we're done. But no, nothing's that easy, is it? Right. So systems and integrations. Put this lovely chart, flow chart together just to demonstrate things properly. So we do have. So let's start with your QMS. Okay, so your QMS should be talking to your technical file. Within your technical file, you will have your PMS plan defined. Okay, your QMS would then, define your risk management activities. So your SOP, so risk management activities will be in here. From your QMS, you must be able to have your processes defined that you're going to be using, methods and processes that you're going to use for from the QMS coming down into your trend reporting, your FSCAs and the entire operations of those, your PSURs and your PSRs, and all of these elements must also feed into your risk management. Okay, so your risk management is going to serve as a key hub where you've predefined your activities, or the benefit risk ratios pre-market stage. But now these key reports are things that you are capturing post market, and these need to feed into your clinical your risk management. Okay. Now, that risk management file and all of these findings, you've got your PMS plan that also defines your clinical evaluations, your post-market clinical follow-up, your SSCPs, and all of those will get input from your risk management file based on these activities, or these activities feeding directly into it. Okay, and all these CERs, PMF, SSCPs, a lot of acronyms here, but all of those will feed into your risk management plan as well. Okay, so that is basically the system that you must have. Must be defined by your QMS, feeding into your technical file. You must have all these plans, the SOPs on things that you're going to do for your surveillance visits from your notified bodies. You must have these reports available demonstrating that you are actively doing what you set out to do in the beginning. And there'll be no issues. Where you have got issues and you have to conduct FSCAs, for example, then speak to your notified body opinion, your notified bodies, speak to the competent authorities, and they are there for you. They will guide you through the process on what you need to do, what action you need to do. But you have to be transparent and keep communication, keep the channel open, and communicate with them frequently. They're there to do a job, and that's exactly that. So utilize these relationships that you've built, and produce the reports that you need to, and update the systems that you need to. Other manufacturers' obligations and best practices. So I think I've touched on a lot of these things, but for the MDR, organizations must appoint a person responsible for regulatory compliance. Now it's actually defined, and the qualifications that the person must have, the experience that they must have. So organizations need to appoint these people, and as a regulatory person myself, then we have to dissect these articles and annexes and put these things into place. And I guess this is why you're on the webinar, to see how other organizations are doing it. What is the best way to do it? What is the industry doing? What will notified bodies expect? All of these things are, by coming together through these webinars, we can all have a single approach to do things that will be acceptable to the notified bodies and to the competent authorities. Define your QMS and the systems, define the methods of collecting, monitoring, and reporting. The key processes, as we've discussed, we've covered these things. So I hope with every single one of these articles, I've touched on what it is, what you need to do, the level of detail. If I wasn't able to cover every single aspect, like I said, we take 2 to 3 hours for every single aspect to dig deeper. There's a lot to discuss. So I hope this has painted a picture or given you how the systems integrate with each other, how the articles work with each other and the annexes. And the picture is, if not clear, it will be clearer. Okay. Your risk management activities according to the ISO 14971, your hazards, what goes wrong if that should happen, and the severities, put in your measures to reduce the risk, and you measure afterwards, and your post and production and post-market activities are feeding into your risk management, your FMEAs. Make sure that you can score things and you carry out that benefit risk ratio analysis properly. You go into CERs and PMCFs. Again, that's another topic that we need to go into. Article 61, Annex 16 of your MDR, the MedDev 271 Rev 4, all of these things, the new MDCG guidelines that have been produced. You have to factor all of these things in, and the 5 stages of a CER, stage 0 to stage 4. You have to plan. You have to what information are you going to gather? The appraisals, the reporting, how you're going to update all of these things. State of the art, well-established technologies, equivalence based on the 3 parameters. All of these things you have to build these things in. But if you're struggling with any of these reports that you need to do, then by all means reach out to Selligence. We'll be able to help you accordingly as well. Your communication channels and methods, with your notified bodies and competent authorities, like I touched based on. Relationships are key, especially in the post-market surveillance stage. So maintain these relationships and look after these relationships as well. Your FSCAs, drafting these and the investigation process. So the follow-up reports, you make an initial report. You don't have to sort of like have known the root cause in order to draft a report. Whatever information that you've got at hand, bear in mind, we've got the reporting timelines, 1510-2. Send those reports. Don't go out of date. Later on, if you've got more information, you can then submit it via other follow-up reports before you submit a final report that will draft, will list all the root cause analysis that you've done, the methods, your conclusions, and the actions that you're going to take. From submitting the final, probably you haven't even corrected the actual fault. You might have to do a design change. So at times it could take a number of years before you issue the final report of an FSCA. So bear all of these things in mind. Okay. Make sure you've got your effective systems in place. have processes within your QMS that you're going to review the systems. What I've found to work in the past, if your management is engaged with the system, your management reviews will highlight some of these things as well. But the caveat to it is don't wait until your management reviews, whether you do them every 3 months or every 6 months or whatever, and make sure you've got a committed top management that are one, financing these systems and making sure that the appropriate people have the right training in what they're doing. Roles and responsibilities have been drawn up. Your RACI, who's responsible, accountable, should be informed, consulted, and all of these things. Just make sure you've defined all of this at the get-go. Okay, so these are some of the manufacturer's obligations and best practices for your post-market surveillance. And yes, that is the end of the webinar presentation. We'll head into a questions and Q&A session, and I'll hand over to my colleague Dylan or Brooke to handle the next section. So I hope this is very a good or useful webinar, and I hope you've got some information from it, and it will help you in your line of work and what you do. So thanks for attending, and thanks for your time.
Thank you so much again to our presenter today, who I'm going to welcome to join us on camera, Joseph Richardson Larby, who again is the medical device regulatory consultant at Celligence. Joseph, thank you so much for sharing all of that wonderful information with us today. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you to all of our attendees as well for sticking with us. We know, as Joseph said, we could have spent significant time on quite a few of these areas. Yeah. So thank you again for sticking with us. Thank you again, Joseph. I'm going to jump right into this first question. Can you elaborate on the requirements for the authorized representative for products manufactured in the US and that are sold in Europe?
Okay, so the manufacturer is based in the US. They have an authorized representative in the EU. With this one, okay, so let's get one thing straight. I think Article 10 of the MDR specifies the obligations of manufacturers. And Article 11 then goes into the responsibilities of the authorized representative. And in Article 11, I think it categorically states that what is an obligation of the manufacturer, or certain obligations of the manufacturer, cannot be delegated to the authorized representatives. And PMS is one of them. So PMS requirements are solely the responsibility of the manufacturer. It doesn't mean the authorized representative cannot feed into it. The authorized representative is also obliged to pass on complaints that it gets from the market as well, to pass those on to the manufacturer, for example. So yes, they can feed into it that way, but it's not the authorized representative's responsibility to gather data, analyze, and carry out all these duties. If a manufacturer is able to get an authorized representative to sort of like help out, and I use the word help out, then that's fine. But the reporting requirements to gather data, to actually carry out the market surveillance, it's solely the responsibility of the manufacturer.
Thank you so much for the clarification there. Moving right along, can the quote, no PMCF justification reside within the post-market surveillance plan? Another great question.
Right, so that's no PMCF justification. Okay, so we have to be very careful when it comes to PMCF. There are very limited ways where, or limited scenarios where a no PMCF justification will actually fly with the notified bodies. So if you're going to use that, you have to make sure that you explain yourself very, very properly. I think a no PMCF justification would be something that would be for, legacy devices that are not only legacy devices because they've been on the market for about, 10, 15 years, but, their risks and safety elements are well proven, and, they don't have any concerns about them. It's a simple technology, stuff like that. Yes, then, it might fly to have a no PMCF justification. However, to answer the question, can that sit in the PMS plan? Yes, it can. It can sit in the PMS plan. Is there a better place for it? Probably yes. It can be as part of your CER document. So because, your CER, your risk manager will all feed into your PMCF, or your PMCF will feed into your PSUR as well. So yes, it can sit there, but, you can do better by adding it to your CER plan document.
Interesting. Thank you so much for that. Moving right along, we've got 3 more questions here that we have time for. Joseph, right. What are your recommendations for companies as it pertains to small companies, i.e. 10 employees or less?
10 employees or less. I mean, the number of employees doesn't really count here. You are a small company, but if you've got a class 3 device that can harm patients, then you still need to do what you need to do. So regardless of the number of employees, yes, you still have to follow all the requirements. I think the only area where, as a small company, you are giving some leeway is people responsible for, or a person responsible for compliance, the PRRC. You are, as a small company, you don't need to have this particular person within your organization. However, you must have access to this particular person on a continuous basis. So if you're working with a consultancy firm like Vigilance, for example, then we'll be readily available. So you don't need to employ the PRRC as part of your staff in your organization. But if you've got a contract with a consultancy, say Vigilance, then that will be deemed acceptable. I think that's the only thing about small companies. But when it comes to PMS requirements, then a small company is supposed to do everything that is basically required of them. The PMS is really product specific, so product specific and based on its classification, not on the size of the organization.
Lovely. Thank you for that clarification.
Right.
What should we keep in mind for the post-market surveillance requirements for softwares?
Software. Okay, so you've got software as a medical device, you've got medical device softwares. The MDR makes it clear on the classification of softwares, and if you go to Annex 8, I think it's Rule 11, that talks about software. It gives you the classification then, whether it's a class 1 or class 2, class 3, and depending on the classification, then you go through, the reports that are needed for that particular classification. So your software must be classified, and once you classify it, then go through Articles 83 to 92 to really draft the ones that are applicable to that particular class of a device. Because your software is basically a device, it's a medical device, period. And you have to look at the classifications and then draft the reports.
Thank you. And again, our last question that we've got time here for, do the PSUR requirements apply to legacy devices?
Legacy devices, yes, your PSUR is applicable to legacy devices. I mean, from the 26th of May, 2021, all devices on the market need to comply to your PMS requirement. So if you're a legacy device or not, come this day, and this is where we are now, you have to basically comply to the PMS requirements. So there's no exception to legacy devices. The only thing that I can think about with legacy devices is it's got something to do with UDMID. And like I mentioned, we can spend a lot of days on on UDMID and legacy devices, but legacy devices that will be registering into UDMID, there are certain things pertaining to a legacy device. For example, a BUDI is not really applicable to a legacy device. Those are the things that are not applicable. But in terms of PMS requirements and the reports that are needed for a PSUR, yes, legacy devices, there's no exception. So you have to go through all the requirements, all the things that are needed. So treat your PSUR similar to a PQR, a product quality review that goes on in the pharma world. Treat it something similar to that. The only difference is it's not heavy on manufacturing processes and other trends, but it's something similar to that. So you draw all your conclusions on the PMS plan and the system that you've drafted, your benefit risk ratios, and all the other areas that I touched base on. I think that's Article 86 will give you all the requirements for your PSURs. So yeah, make sure you go through those. Your PMCF will feed into your PSURs as well. But yeah, legacy devices are not exempted from PSUR.
Lovely, understood. Thank you so much. I know we're a bit over time, as Joseph said, we could spend a few hours on all these. No worries. We appreciate your insight and your expertise on this so much. And we certainly appreciate all of you submitting questions and sticking with us today. Thank you all again for your time and consideration. Again, the Selligence team was kind enough to record today's presentation, which I will be sending out to everyone once we get off the line. I will be sending that out via Dropbox. So if anyone does not have access to Dropbox, please just send me a message and we will get that over to you through another means. I truly cannot thank our sponsored partners today enough for their time and consideration in developing today's presentation. The Selligence team has so many wonderful representatives. Again, today we heard from Joseph Richardson Larby, who's the regulatory affairs expert in medical devices. Looking forward to continuing to partner with Selligence on future webinars coming up later this year. But Joseph, thank you so much again for all of your time and efforts. It was a fantastic presentation.
Thank you, Brooke. Thanks for having me, and thanks to all that attended. Thank you, and catch you on the next one.
Yep. See everybody soon. Any further questions, comments for the Selligence team, please feel free to reach out to me directly on webinars@q1productions.com. Or of course, my good colleague, Dylan Mulvihill, has provided his contacts there. Thank you again, everyone. Have a great rest of the day. Be safe and be well. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.